subclass, and I want to go through the details and why it's overpowered, or why people think it may be overpowered, and really get into the nitty-gritty, into the minutiae. So yeah, let's get started. So the Order of the Scribes, in the description it says magic of the book. That's what many folks call wizardry. The name is apt, given how many time wizards spend poring over tomes and penning theories about the nature of magic. It's rare to see wizards travelling without books and scrolls sprouting from their bags, and a wizard would go to great lengths to plumb the archives of ancient knowledge. Among wizards, the Order of the Scribes is the most bookish. It takes many forms, but its primary mission is the same everywhere, recording magical discoveries so that wizardry may flourish. And while all wizards value spellbooks, a wizard in the Order of the Scribes magically awakens their book, turning it into a trusted companion. A wizard studies books, but a wizardly scribe talks to theirs. When you're building a subclass, it's really important to think of the story you want to tell with the subclass, with the character. And the Order of the Scribes is quite unique because it has something to play off. You can have a sentient, talking spellbook. It doesn't have to be sentient and talking. It can be just more like a dog level of intelligence, obeying your commands and helping you out. But I think if you have a talking book, it gives your character a lot of material to work with. Now, there have been plenty of talking books in media in the past. I'm sure there's been a couple in The Page Master, for example, or I believe there was one in Beauty and the Beast, possibly. I'm not 100% sure, but the whole grimoire, big heavy book, works with a Harry Potter dark aesthetic style. You can see Daniel Radcliffe. I'm going to put some pictures somewhere in the video. And you know, the whole old English academia style. Also, you can go in the other direction, having the old Gandalf wizard with the long white beard and the flowing robes, giant hat. And having a scribe, a talking book, is quite a interesting companion. With a lot of the other subclasses and classes, the story is already told. It's already laid out before you with all your level up powers. There are exceptions like the Warlock, and the Warlock, it gets its powers at the start of its story, not midway. You're not midway through the story when you get them to level 1. You could say the same about the Artificer as well. They start out as a mechanically minded subclass, and they invent new things as they go. They're a story progression. But with other subclasses, the Fighter, for example, they're already a trained fighter at the start. It's not like you're starting your story from the beginning. This is the same with the Order of the Scribes. You've already got you're already halfway through your story. This is not the same with the Wizard subclass. Because your subclass comes at 2nd level, you can start relatively new to the campaign as a blank slate, and you can decide where you want to branch out from there. But having an interest in books, or discovering a sentient book, for example, or having ties to a library or an explorer's guild, are all great plot hooks that can be used with the Order of the Scribes subclass. Being a pioneering adventurer, maybe taking a couple of levels of Bard or a couple of levels of Artificer, can really show the direction of the flavour you want to go with this. So let's move on to the abilities of the scribe. At 2nd level, you get Wizardly Quill. Now, this is more of a thematic ability. It's not got a lot of meat when it comes to combat mechanics, but let's read it. As a bonus action, you can magically create a tiny quill in your free hand. The magic quill has the following properties. The quill doesn't require ink, and when you write with it, it produces ink in a colour of your choice on the writing surface. The time you must spend to copy a spell into your spellbook equals 2 minutes per spell level if you use the quill for the transcription. You can erase anything you write with the quill if you wave the feather over the text as a bonus action, provided the text is within 5 feet of you. This quill disappears if you create another one or if you die. Now, it's one of those abilities that the more imagination you use, the more mileage you're going to get out of it. I can see most people not really using it unless they're in a more subterfuge setting, if they're in a city political setting, instead of the traditional going to a dungeon, fighting a monster and getting the gold. Now, let's go to the meat of this subclass. At level 2 you also get access to Awakened Spellbook. Using specially prepared inks and ancient incantations passed down by your wizardly order, you have awakened an arcane sentience within your spellbook. When you are holding the book, it grants you the following benefits. You can use the book as a spellcasting focus for your wizard spells. Now, using the arcane focus is not really followed by a lot of people. I think that the idea of having components is great flavour, or having an arcane focus, but it's not a requirement because it can really bog down and take the fun away from the players if you don't have access to these items. So, the second part, when you cast a wizard spell with a spell slot, you can temporarily replace its damage type with a type that appears in another spell in your spellbook, which magically alters the spell's formula for this casting only. The latter spell must be of the same level as the spell slot you expended. Now, this is where the powerful / overpowered comparisons come into play. And level 1 you can get lots of different elements and abilities. For example, you can have force damage, lightning damage, fire damage, poison damage. All of these cantrips and level 1 spells become even more powerful because you can transfer the abilities to other spells. So you have to think about not just the spell's ability or elemental type, but you also have to think of the spell's abilities, what it does. For example, Thunderclap becomes very powerful if you can transfer thunder damage to poison damage, to fire damage. And also things like, I believe there's a cantrip that's like a poison mist, which deals 1d12 damage. The problem is, a lot of things are immune to poison, but if you change that to ice, you're going to get a very powerful cantrip. Now, the next part is when you cast a wizard spell as a ritual, you can use the spell's normal casting time rather than adding 10 minutes to it. Once you use this benefit, you can't do so until you finish the long rest. So, it's a one and done for every long rest you take, but having the option of casting rituals very quickly can help you prepare for fights or combat, and it really adds extra options because you don't have to worry about setting up everything at the start of the day or taking your time to complete these complex rituals. And I know a lot of the time when you're having a pre-combat in-character discussion about what to do, what tactics to use, it can really take the wizard out of the equation because they're too busy fiddling with their incantations and trying to set up a ritual spell. Now, the last part of the Awakened Spellbook, if necessary, you can replace the book over the course of a short rest using the wizardly quill to write arcane sigils in a blank book or a magic spellbook which you've attuned. At the end of the rest, your spellbook's consciousness is summoned into the new book, which the consciousness transforms into your spellbook along with all the spells. If the previous book still existed somewhere, all the spells vanish from its pages. Now, this is just a get out of jail free card. It solves a lot of problems and inconveniences you may have with losing the spellbook or something to that effect. You can replace it without too much bother. And this can be a good thing and a bad thing, because I know at low levels losing your spellbook can be a very character defining moment, and having the ability to just summon another one up from a short rest or a long rest is kind of deflating. It can take a lot of potential story elements out of your character's story. But on the other hand, it can take a lot of the drudgery out of trying to get a new spellbook and writing all the spells down again. This can be seen as a great hassle to players, so taking it out of the way is a good thing and a bad thing. Now, at 6th level, you get the ability Manifest Mind. You can conjure forth the mind of your awakened spellbook. As a bonus action, while your book is on your person, you can cause the mind to manifest as a tiny spectral object, hovering in an unoccupied space of your choice within 60 feet of you. The spectral mind is intangible and doesn't occupy its space, and it sheds a dim light in a 10-foot radius. It looks like a ghostly tome, a cascade of text, or a scholar from the past. Now, this is limited by your imagination. Again, you can take something really out of the ordinary and really cement your character as unique. For example, you could take, if you're playing a Goliath wizard, which is a very strange combination, you could take a giant rock with sigils carved onto it and have it like a floating companion. Another way to get your story juices flowing is if you have it taking the form of a long dead relative or ancestor, and this can add a lot of story and really lets your DM give you hints sometimes when you're struggling with a certain portion of a map or if you're lost for direction. While manifested, the spectral mind can hear and see, and it has dark vision with a range of 60 feet. The mind can telepathically share with you what it sees and hears, no action required. So you can use it to scout ahead and potentially set up ambushes or avoid ambushes. This almost takes the place of a scout. So, for example, your rogue can scout ahead with the floating spectral tome, and if it manages to cover the dim light of the 10-foot radius, it can help relay information. Whenever you cast a wizard spell on your turn, you can cast it as if you were in the spectral mind space instead of your own, using its senses. You can do so a number of times per day, equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses when you finish your long rest. So this literally turns all your short range cantrips and spells into something that's long range. You can use your tome, throw it into a room and use it almost like a flashbang if you use blinding lights, for example. This essentially gives the wizard a mobile grenade launcher of sorts, and is combining that with the elemental substitute ability. You can really take advantage if you know what you're up against. Sometimes players can use this in bad faith if they know exactly what's in the room next to them and they know which elemental weakness the creature may have. Then you can just send the spellbook in to do all of the work. So a modicum of care and consideration to the rest of the group is in order, making sure that you're not abusing the power you've been given to take people out of the game and turn it into a video game where you're trying to just match the elemental types to the weakness. You should play within your character's knowledge. As a bonus action, you can cause the spectral mind to hover up to 30 feet into an unoccupied space that you or it can see. It can pass through the creatures, but not objects. The spectral mind stops manifesting if it's ever more than 300 feet away from you, or if someone casts a spell magic on it, if the awakened spellbook is destroyed, or if you die, or if you dismiss the spectral mind as a bonus action. Now, one last thing I want to say about the manifest mind. When you eventually get to spells like Cone of Cold, this really ramps up the destructive ability of the wizard. So expect your DM to also ramp up the challenge level as well. One thing I've seen with some DMs is if a character is getting too powerful, they'll introduce a succubi or incubi that can mind control the character. So if you're out of balance with the rest of your party, it can really be to the detriment of the other players. So you should keep that in mind and try to have a really balanced party. A face of the party, a damage dealer, healer, tank, and a sneaky, stealthy sort of skill monkey. At level 10, you gain access to Master Scrivener, and whenever you finish a long rest, you can create one magical scroll by touching a wizardly quill to a blank piece of paper or parchment and causing one spell from your awakened spellbook to be copied onto the scroll. So with this, you can make a spell scroll that must be of level 1 or 2 and has a casting time of 1 action, and it has to be in your spellbook already. It doesn't say if you can change the elements. I would assume not, because it's copying the original spell. Once in the scroll, the spell level counts as 1 spell higher, so you should only go for spells that have a incremental upgrade every time you cast a different level of the spell. So when you break it down, essentially you can take a level 1 or 2 spell and cast it like a level 2 or level 3 spell. And this is probably capped at level 1 and 2 to avoid using the Fireball spell and other powerful level 3 spells you gain access to when your character hits level 5. As a side note, you also gain the ability to halve the gold and time that's spent on making a scroll if you use the wizardly quill. Now this is purely out of combat mechanical preparation, so don't dwell too much on it, but it's a useful feature to have. And finally, its cornerstone ability, at level 14, the Order of the Scribes gets one with the word. Your connection to your awakened spellbook has become so profound that your soul has become entwined with it. When the book is on your person, you have advantage to all intelligence arcana checks, as the spellbook helps you remember magical lore. Now this is not just a mechanical benefit, but it's also a progression in the storytelling of the character as well. If you spend so many levels, so much time, it almost becomes an integral part of your character. Also, if you take damage when the spellbook is manifested, you can use it to catch the bullet for you, so to speak, and prevent all the damage that's dealt to you. It uses a reaction and it dismisses the spellbook, but this is a really extreme case. You should only use this as a last-ditch effort to stay alive in extreme situations. And once you've done this, you have to roll 3d6, and the spellbook temporarily loses the spells equal to the combined skill level you roll or higher. And so you have to calculate, once you get the number, which spells you want to sacrifice and which ones you want to keep. So with this in mind, the more spells you have in the spellbook, the more powerful you will be as a wizard. For example, if your roll totals a 9, spells vanish from the book that have a combined level of at least 9. Which could mean 1 9th level spell, 3 3rd level spells, or some other combination. If there aren't enough spells in your spellbook to cover this, you drop to 0 hit points. So this can be really risky if you don't have enough spells to accommodate this ability, or spells at a high enough level. And to emphasize how powerful and how rarely this is used, you have to roll a d6. And this is how many long rests you have to take until you get the ability back to cast these spells. So, overall, this wizard subclass has a really powerful level 2 and level 6 ability. Once you hit the level 10 and 14, it is good, but it's not really the most powerful thing going. And like I said previously, the more spells you have in the spellbook, the more powerful this class can be. But the other side of it is true. The less spells you have, the less viable this subclass is. So if you're going into a more dungeon action focused campaign, then maybe this is not the best place to choose it. But if you're going for a more lore and academia heavy setting, then, for example, the Candlekeep's Mystery book that came out recently, there should be a front cover around somewhere. That's a really good way to integrate this Order of the Scribes character. It works thematically perfect. It's 1-to-1. Also, if you want to try a custom campaign, you could always try the new Magic the Gathering setting, Strixhaven. I'm not sure, I'll put it up here, but essentially it's wizardry school, and all of the spells are themed around different groups, different classes. And I think Order of the Scribes in this themed setting could work really well. So yeah, tell me what you think, leave a comment down below, and tell me which subclass you'd like me to cover next. I'm open to all possibilities, and if you're unsure if I've covered a subclass or not, there should be a playlist down below, and it'll give you an idea of which ones I've covered, which ones I haven't covered, and you're more than welcome to make requests. I've been Rich, and I'll speak to you next time. Bye. While I've got your attention, I've just checked the analytics, and it turns out 7.1% of people are subscribed. Everyone that watches the video is not subscribed. And it takes a couple of seconds to click that subscription button, and it helps with the algorithm as well. It really helped the channel out. So if you do, thank you very much.